Hello, this is Nikki Jackson from Southwest Tennessee Community College, and this video is pertaining to examples from Self-Check 4.1 and Math 1710. Notice how you have your first example is dealing with an ellipse. So you have to locate the foci, and you also have to make sure that you graph. So what I want you to pay attention to is notice how the x comes first, meaning that the dominant axis is going to be the x-axis. So you're either going to have answer choice A or D as one of your graphs. So let's narrow that down. Hopefully you can understand my handwriting. So my apologies, I didn't use a marker this time. And I was rushing. So now you got x squared over 49 plus y squared over 4. That looks like a whole nother letter, but that's a y, y'all. Equals 1. Since your 49 is bigger than your 4, the 49 correlates with the x-axis. Thus, the major, aka the dominant axis, is going to be horizontal. So, right here you have negative a and 0 and a and 0. So that's what's going to be given to you. We know that 49 is going to be relevant to the a. So a squared is 49. Square root of a is 7. So let me make a slight correction right there. That's going to be a squared. That is a y. These are also a's, but they look like 9s. I didn't know I was writing that fast, so my apologies. So now that we solved for a, which is what goes right here, so for clarification purposes, the standard form for an ellipse is provided right here. So now that we have that, we see how the 49 correlates with the A. So we know the vertices are going to be negative 7 and positive 7. Notice how the x-axis comes first, or the x-coordinate comes first. That's coming from the square root of 49. Now to solve B, we know that B was this. So B squared was 4. Square root of 4 is plus or minus 2. B is relevant to the y-axis, so notice how the coordinates right here is for the y. Therefore, your endpoints on the y-axis are going to be positive 2 and negative 2. So these are where your graphs are going to touch. So on the x-axis, it's going to touch at negative 7 and positive 7. On the y-axis at negative 2 and positive 2. Now we have your foci, or foci. I don't know how to pronounce that. We have to make sure that for Fior and Melissa might say it a little bit differently. So now we're going to find c squared using the Pythagorean theorem. Remember that it's going to be horizontal because your x-axis was a major axis. So instead of adding, we're going to subtract. So we got a squared minus b squared equals c squared. Now the reason being is, unlike the Pythagorean theorem, which is relevant to triangles, you can't create a triangle in a circle. But an ellipse is either going to be too narrow or too wide to do that triangle. Therefore, you're subtracting. So once we do that, we're going to have 45 right here. I made a mistake. So 49 minus 4 is 45. Right here, I'm going to break that 45 down because I know 9 times 5 gives you 45. The square root of 9 is 3. 5 doesn't have a square root. So since we're dealing with square roots, we know it's going to be positive or negative. Your foci is going to be negative 3 square root of 5 and 0. Because again, you know this horizontal, that's going to be your x-axis. And positive 3 square root of 5 and 0. So now that we have that, we know the vertices once again were negative 2 and 2 on the y-axis. And then it was going to be positive 7 and negative 7 on the x-axis. So we know now that it's going to be graph D. Remember, this one right here was relevant to the y-axis. So we're left, meaning that the y-axis is going to be dominant. This one looks like it's even. That one is a little bit too long. So therefore, we're going to have D. Your next example is find the standard form of a circle given the center and the radius. Well, the first thing you need to understand is the standard form for a circle. Ooh, what I did forget. Let's go back to number 1. If I wanted to graph using the graphing calculator, I could do that. So this is going back to number 1. So my bad. This right here could go in the calculator. But notice how you have to isolate the y variable. And you're going to have to do it 2 times. You're going to have one is positive, one is negative. So for my positive part, notice I've already had the negative in. I'm going to put 2 square root. So let me show you how I did that. So the number 2, here's your second key, square root. Everything has to go under the radical. So open parentheses, the 1 minus, open parentheses again, because the x squared is the numerator, divided by 49, which is your denominator. And close it again, because notice how you have the fraction itself, which is the open and close, and then you have the 1. Hit enter and lock it in. I've already typed in the negative part. So now I'm going to go to zoom, go to zoom square, and now you see how you got your graph. So I wanted to show y'all that before I move on to number 2. So my apologies for going back. Now, let's make a circle. Make a circle. So for that one, for number 2, when you're pertaining to a circle, you have your center and then you have your radius. It only wants you to find the standard form of the equation of a circle, not actually draw it. So the standard form of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, where h and k is the center. So given to you, you had your points of 4 and 3. You know your radius was 5. So I substituted those points in. You do not have to simplify it using FOIL method. So now your final answer is, again, my apologies for the scribble scrabble. You're going to have x minus 4 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 25. Pertaining to other formulas, now number 3, and sorry about that mark right there, you're looking at the distance formula. And you have 2 points given to you. You have 8 and 9, and then you have 20 and 18. So take a moment to actually write those down. And it's always a good idea to label them so you know exactly what you're going to substitute and where you're going to substitute it. So here we go. And again, my apologies for the mistakes. That is x. So your distance formula is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Notice right here I provided the points and I labeled them. So now you see where I'm substituting where and why. So once you substitute and simplify, your final answer is the square root of 225, which is 15. So what we did right there was do a lot of substitution. Your next example is dealing with a word problem. So let me zoom out so you can see it in its entirety. So let me cover that up so we won't have too much to look at. Notice how the height is going to be 10 feet and then your width is 30. So that's very important when we're going to be dealing with. So hopefully you have finished reading it. We also have been able to identify what type of shape it is. So it's a semi-elliptical, so it's half of that. So let's break that on down. So first we're going to find the height of the archway. So we want it to be 4 feet from the center. So if it's 7 or less, we know that it can't fit. So if you pay close attention to it, you don't know where the 4 came from. So this 4 was half of your width. So the 4 is half of the width of the truck. Then I did a very rough sketch of what I wanted to do. So we know that the truck itself, from the ground up, is 10 feet. There we go right here. Since the truck itself is going to be 8 feet wide, we want to make sure that it's 1 less. This is what the 7 came from. And notice right here, you got the 4 and 4. If you go back to the picture, because you might have to have dual screens with this, we know that the width was 30. So half the width is going to be negative 15. So 15 on one side and 15 on the other side. Because it's an ellipse, you're going to use the ellipse standard form, which is x squared over a squared plus y squared and b squared equals 1. Now I'm going to substitute my values in. So we have a horizontal, which is your 15. Then we had a height, which is 10. We don't want to split that in half. Substitute your values after you square it. This is what you have. Now this 4. The 4 comes in from half of the width of the truck. So you're going to do that part now. So we're going to continue to simplify. So now we have 16 over 225 plus y squared over 100 equals 1. Well, we don't like fractions. At least I don't, especially unless I'm sharing a pizza. And I usually don't like to share. So I'm going to multiply by the common denominator, which is going to be 900. So when I simplify this, I know 225 can go to 900 4 times. 100 can go to 900 9 times. And then 900 times 1 is 900. Continue to simplify. Now we're going to solve for y. Notice how you subtracted 64 from both sides. Then we have to take the square root of 836 and 9. Remember, square root is both positive and negative. Now be mindful, since we're dealing with a truck, it's driving on top of a road, not under a road. So we're going to use the positive form. And since it is more than 7, since it's more than 7 feet, it has enough space to go through the archway. Since we're pertaining to ellipse, here's just a picture of an ellipse and not a word problem. Since you already have the picture given to you, it wants to know what's the standard form of the equation and what are your foci. So you got everything that's already given to you. So again, it wants to know what the standard form of the equation and your foci. So if I'm looking at that, so I'm looking at your x-axis and your y-axis. My y-axis are 4, but my x-axis are 5. So therefore, it looks horizontal. So my x-axis is dominant. So my x values are going to come first. So that's why I have x squared over a squared plus y squared b squared equals 1. So my x-axis is dominant, therefore it's horizontal. Still pertaining to the graph, again, you might need to have dual screens. So let me go back and forth. So notice where I'm getting the negative 5 and positive 5, and the 4 and negative 4. Therefore, you have these numbers. For the foci, using a version of the Pythagorean theorem, I'm going to have a squared minus b squared. So my c is going to be 3. So now let me substitute my values in. Now that I know what my x value, which is going to be a, and my y value, which is going to be b, square them, the equation is going to be x squared over 25 plus y squared over 16 equals 1. The foci are going to be negative 3 and 0 and 3 and 0. And lastly, we're dealing with another formula, which is the midpoint formula. You have 2 points, 2 and 10, and 4 and 8. So given, you have the midpoint formula right here. So yay, woo, rah. Notice how I actually labeled my points as x1 and y1, x2 and y2, then substitute them in. So 2 plus 4 is 6, 2 over 6 divided by 2 is 3, 10 plus 8 is 18, 18 divided by 2 is 9. So your midpoint, if you write it out as an ordered pair, would be 3 and 9. So that concludes the video pertaining to the examples from Self-Check 4.1.